Welcome to Fitz's Electric Bar, coming to you live from the concert review desk. One of the things I kind of lament is that we don't tend to get as much local coverage of concert reviews as we used to get. I guess there just isn't the demand for it, the disappearance of printed media. But I've gone to see a couple shows, and I wanted to kind of weigh in on these two shows. So, tale of two concerts. One of them was Peter Gabriel playing a big hockey arena here in Vancouver at the Rogers Arena, and I wanted to talk a bit about that. A phenomenal show, great experience, and just so glad to have had the experience of seeing Peter Gabriel at least once in my life. And the second one was a show at a much smaller venue called the Vogue Theatre, and a band I've seen about 4 or 5 times, the Jonestown Massacre. So two very different shows, very different venues, very different experiences, both very enjoyable. And I thought I would kind of cover those off in this video. So stay tuned.
Putting their lives at risk.
As I kind of intimated, I've got some notes here that I'm going to refer to a little bit just so I can kind of remember. I'm going to start off with the Peter Gabriel show. So played Rogers Arena about a week ago. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but around October the 6th or 7th. And had pretty good seats. I don't go to large venue shows very often. For many years, I completely poo-pooed it. Now it really just depends on who's playing, but generally not my favorite experience. But I think Peter Gabriel and his band did a really good job of, I guess, adapting or, creating a show that was definitely suited to a large venue. And it is fun to actually be with, 12, 14, 15,000 fans taking in and experiencing the same show together, especially when it's a powerful one. So to start off, it was a show. I'd wanted to see Peter Gabriel for years, had not had a chance to see him, and I did actually go online and find some reviews that he was doing some shows earlier in Canada and in the States. I think The Guardian had a good review. Anyways, the reviews were such that I thought, okay, I've got to go see him. You just never know how many opportunities you're going to get. And the whole multimedia aspect of this show also drew me in. And he's Peter Gabriel, right? So in his band, he had Manu Katché, who's worked with Jan Garbarek. I'm sorry, I don't remember Jan Garbarek. Done a lot of jazz stuff, but just, there are very few drummers that I would really call out as being so exciting. I think usually a drummer is successful when they're kind of invisible and they hold down the backbeat, but I'm not a big fan of long drum solos and things like that. Even though I do like the Grateful Dead, I'm not generally a drums front and center kind of guy. Oh, and the OCs as well. The 2-drummer Assault is very good on the OCs, but I digress, as I always do. Manu Katché on drums, effortless in how he drums, but so powerful. You just can't believe that this guy drums with the kind of punch that he does. And when you watch him, he just looks like it's just a day at the beach. Just fabulous. And then Tony Levin as well, who's played bass with Peter Gabriel for years. And you could tell that Peter Gabriel is just so happy to have him on stage that it's just like a very familiar, a nice suit that fits well, and they really play off each other really well. So those were kind of part of the band members, many other band members in there. The show was 2 sets, and one of the things I found a little unfortunate was during the first set, during the areas where people click their jewelry instead of clapping their hands, in other words, the expensive seats, It was almost completely empty. I think those are called club seats, and people, I think, get a yearly. They basically buy the seats, I believe, for the year, and very few people from that group showed up beforehand. And for those that looked, and I think often people do, and I was guilty of it as well, is you check the set list before the artist comes to town. Sometimes I intentionally don't because I want to be surprised, but I was curious. And this tour, given the amount of complexity around the visuals and everything else, and the band sophistication requires, they have a pretty fixed set list with maybe a song or two that gets swapped out, but it's pretty fixed. Anyways, long and the short of it is I think a lot of people saw that on the first set, Peter Gabriel was doing a lot of new stuff that they weren't familiar with, and so they showed up for the second set, and to their loss. One person one review I read, described it as the first set was really, instead of having an opening act, Peter Gabriel was his own opening act. I thought that was a great description. And the first few songs, couple songs, I guess, I got my set list here, I can refer to. Washing of the Water and Growing Up were, of course, early Peter Gabriel songs. And then the majority of the remainder of the first set, and there were like 10 songs, and these are not short songs, were new material. So I don't know if you know, but the new material that Peter Gabriel is playing, so for the last 7 or 8 months, he's been releasing a new song every full moon, which is very cool. So it's on the streaming platforms. There's no album that's been released or CD that's been released. It's all coming on the streaming platforms. So I found myself over the last couple of months, it's a full moon, and it's kind of like, got to see what Peter Gabriel's dropped. And so, like 8 new songs, and many of those were covered off in the first set. And I had a chance to listen to them quite a bit, and I got to tell you, a lot of the new stuff is very, very strong. I'm going to put my bias on the table. I was never a huge fan of kind of 80s Peter Gabriel, the stuff where he really reached his zenith of popularity, of kind of the Sledgehammer, big time kind of stuff. It's okay, and I mean, it's great, but it's just, I guess it got overplayed, and I've always been a bit of a music snob. When stuff gets played to death, I really lose interest. So, but this new stuff, Panopticon, which, well, I'm going to back up a little bit. So there was definitely a kind of a theme or a narrative to this whole show. He started out with the core band members around a kind of fire, almost like a primitive, quest for fire type of thing, like they've just discovered fire. And he started talking a little bit and laid out the thematic part of the concert, which is related to time and space, in particular time, how time passes, the context of time, and so he goes back in time to sort of the primitive era, and that was when he did Washing of the Water and Growing Up. I can't say that it always made sense to me, but there were so many moments of poignancy that he was able to give in his preambles to some of the songs that I found it very, very moving. Panopticon, my understanding is that particular song, which is the first of the new ones in the first set, relates to the idea, and I think there's a project out there where people are videotaping what's happening in their world. Now, while on one level it seems like, oh my God, that's like a privacy thing, these are people who are videotaping their own lives, and in particular things related to injustice in the world, and that it's being captured. And I guess part of the idea is that people can share those experiences, and potentially for those people that are perpetrators, maybe at some point they can be called to the carpet. I don't really know much more than that, but the song was accompanied by some great video work where it looked like, facial recognition capture and things like that in the videos that were played. The stage, lights, the videos, the special effects, as it were. I'm not a big special effects guy normally, but it was all used for the purpose of really underscoring what was a great show. So there was that, 4 Kinds of Horses, just a deliciously fabulous, beautiful, deep Peter Gabriel song. Highly recommend that you give that a listen on the streaming services, 4 Kinds of Horses. I.O., input output. And then a whole bunch more of the new stuff. And he closed out the first set with Sledgehammer. And, live, as I said, not my favorite per se, but got the crowd up and running. Because, the crowd was pretty somber, especially in that first set. It's pretty gutsy. I think of not many other artists other than Neil Young that throws out a whole bunch of new material. And you can expect their audience to really gobble it up. And I think people were really absorbing it, but I'm guessing most were not familiar with it. And it was really cool. So close with Sledgehammer, and then comes back out for set two. So some of the stuff that was covered off in set two, a new song that I also think is just beautiful called Love Can Heal. Again, check that out on the streaming services, one of the new ones, Road to Joy. And then and The Court as well, were all covered in set two. Court is a pretty cool new tune. And then some of the familiar songs that you might expect from his repertoire, Don't Give Up. There was a cellist and a violinist providing vocals and backup vocals, and the woman who's the cellist did the Kate Bush part of Don't Give Up, and it was really moving. And the end of the song, they were dancing around on the stage and kind of raising their hands and looking out over the audience. And, even as I talk about it, I found it very moving and emotional. It was, to me, it felt like he was saying, our times are difficult and challenging, but don't give up, either personally or as a society, that we can get past this difficult period. And then a little bit later on in the second set, Red Rain. Just always loved that song. Very powerful. One thing I have to say about Peter Gabriel on this tour and this stage of his life, he still has a fabulous voice, very rich. He can hit those high registers really, really well. It's still a very strong and powerful instrument, his voice, and it was really, really good. He was really funny. He was talking about how they had created avatars, for the show, and that they, in fact, he was kind of pretending that it wasn't the real band on stage and it was all a bunch of avatars. And he referenced the ABBA thing where ABBA had created avatars of 20 years younger and still, young and attractive or whatever in performing their music. He said, our avatars are 20 years older and 20 pounds heavier. Got a good laugh out of that. Anyways, more stuff. In the second set, a bit of new stuff again. As I said, Love Can Heal, Road to Joy, The Court, and then just rocked into Big Time. Very good live. Whatever I say about in terms of what I want to listen to at home, it was really, really good. And then closes out the second set and before the encores with Salisbury Hill. He talked before every song. He would give an intro. He was very gracious in kind of tipping his hand to the different band members and introducing them at the outset of the whole show. And then throughout, when somebody would be doing something that would kind of feature them, he would call them out specifically and recognize them. The other part was there were so many pieces of visual art that was created. Ai Weiwei did some work that was really cool. Just some really cool stuff that really complemented the songs and were just visually stunning. And it brought a whole nother level to the whole concert experience, seeing this art, trying to, figure out, was it more of an impressionistic kind of complement to the music? Was it something that maybe had some undertones to it, some political, spiritual undertones, And, as all great art, it can probably be taken in many, many different ways and enjoyed in many different levels. And it was really, really good. Anyways, closing with Salisbury Hill. That song, still for me, is just so powerful. I'm also not a big Gabriel Genesis fan. I know that's sacrilegious, but for whatever reason, I like late career Genesis, The Wind and the Wuthering and Trick of the Tail. I think I've mentioned that before, but I love early career Peter Gabriel, and I'm starting to really love late career Peter Gabriel as well. I think it's been a while since he released something, but I can't wait for this new record. I'm going to be definitely lining up to get that one. So close with Salisbury Hill. 2 encores, 1 song each encore. One of them was In Your Eyes. What can you say? That song that was so powerful in the movie Say Anything. Just beautiful. And again, visually, just stunning, the stuff. And he would thank the artists that created the visuals. And then the final encore, Biko. What can you say about that? Memories of Live Aid and the power. And again, Manu Katché with the drums doing that. The drums remind me, although it's a bit sacrilegious because really Biko should be should be the benchmark. But the drums remind me of Atmosphere from Joy Division. It's just that very processional kind of drum beat, very hard, heavy drum beat, and it carries on, and Biko, Biko, and everybody's chanting it. And at one point, then he walks off the stage, and just before he does, he says, "Now it's up to you." It was really powerful. It was such a great show, and one of the things he said before one of the new songs, "Live and Let Live," which is, familiar to many who, followed Nelson Mandela, but always one of the things that really inspired me about Nelson Mandela. Sorry, getting emotional. And the story is that after however number of years that he was in prison, I don't know, was it 27 years? That his captors had murdered his people, had put him in jail, solitary confinement for many of the 27 years, or the years that he was in prison. I don't remember how many years. And Nelson Mandela came out and he said he made a decision to work with his captors to get past what had happened. I mean, to not have vengeance in his heart, and to know that to poison the rest of his life against his captors, even though that would be such a human thing to do, that he chose not to do that and set the stage really for the healing in South Africa. I think is a tremendous, like a humanitarian gesture and personal sacrifice in so many ways, but his values are much higher than personal vengeance. The whole show, it was beyond just a concert. It was a total immersive experience, and it really touched me very deeply, and I thought it was very, very meaningful. And I don't think he's got many more shows on this tour. I do encourage you to listen to his new music, and if you do get a chance to see him on those last few remaining shows, highly recommend it. It is fantastic. The second part really is the Jonestown Massacre, and it really is a tale of two concerts because a completely different experience. The Vogue Theatre, not a very big theater here in Vancouver. One of the things I love about the Brian Jonestown Massacre is their chaos. Anybody who's seen the documentary called Dig from many years ago, about the story about the Brian Jonestown Massacre and the Dandy Warhols kind of both rising out of the Portland scene. And the story of the Brian Jonestown Massacre was the complete self-destructive, they're doing a big show in LA in front of the A&R men, and they're getting into fistfights like the Davis brothers did and the Kinks. But, at a time when they're at their height of their popularity, and it was just like, self-sabotage of the first order. One of the things I think I love about the Brian Jonestown Massacre is just their penchant for falling to pieces. Like the music could just all fall to pieces, and at the same time it can all come together in this glorious jam. I thought the show this last week was really a good show. They long tune-ups, bad pacing, but the jams that they got were so good. And some of the jams would just go on, and they were just fabulous, just beautiful balance of feedback and rock and roll, echoey garage rock kind of thing, and it was really good. Apparently the night before in Seattle, because friends had gone to those shows, he had just abused the drummer in terms of he didn't like what he was doing, counting in the band with the click, click, click with the drumsticks, and among other things. Somebody said in our group said, I think Anton's meds were working because he seemed very calm. Very good show. And when I'm in the mood, I love to see those guys because they're, to me, the epitome of rock and roll. The idea that you can really ascend and create just magic, and then it can all just fall apart at the drop of a hat. I used to like that with Lou Reed as well, and there are other bands that I'm sure you guys, if you're into rock and roll, could relate to. So that's it. Tale of two shows, two very good shows, and Thanks for joining me, and we'll be back to regular scheduled programming shortly.